Today we're going to learn the first Sicha of Chelek Yud Gimel on Parashas Nasso. It's actually not a particularly long Sicha, but it's got a very beautiful and powerful, relevant message for all of us. The Rebbe starts off by saying that there's something we've discussed numerous times, and that is that the principle that Torah is eternal is something that applies, obviously, throughout the whole Torah. In other words, not just some parts of the Torah are eternal. The entire Torah is eternal, and everything within the Torah is there to teach us lessons in our lives. And that means that that means that even if there are things that the Torah talks about that physically do not apply to the world that we live in now, for whatever reason it might be, those same things have a relevance to us in our spiritual lives right now. And one of the reasons for that, which the Rebbe points out parenthetically, is that whatever happens in the material world is only a reflection of how things are in the spiritual world. So what happens in our parasha, and what we're going to learn a lesson from, is that there are two families within the tribe of Levi who are counted in this parasha, Gershon and Merari, which actually is a theme that began in the previous parasha, when the first of the three families of the Levium, of the Levites, was counted. The family of Kahas in the end of last week's parasha, and that concludes in this week's parasha and leads to the story. So in other words, we've got three families within the tribe of Levi, and they're all counted over the end of last week's parasha and primarily at the beginning of this week's parasha. So obviously, it goes without saying that the physical counting of those people is not an eternal experience, because it only applied to those families of Levi when they were in the desert, and even then specifically, it was only in the second year that the Jews were in the desert, and that's it. It only happened once. But the spiritual relationship and the spiritual message of that story is relevant to us even now as well. And that's what we want to find out. You're ones there to understand what the spiritual message for us today would be. We first have to introduce Lama Hutzruchu Yisrael Lihishor Bamidbar Arboim Shana. By way of introduction, what we're going to analyze is, why did the Jews have to go through the desert for 40 years? What's the spiritual message of the Jews being in the desert for that period of time? Yes, of course, everybody will tell you. You know why they were in the desert for 40 years? Because there was a story of the spies, and the spies went back to report to the Jewish people that they would never be able to enter the land of Israel, and that just everybody got sucked into it, and they became so negative about the possibility of going into Israel, and Hashem punished them, so to speak. That for each day that the spies had been on their mission, which was a 40-day mission in total, 1 year of delay to get into the land of Israel. So that's the argument that everybody will tell you. Oh, why were they in the desert for 40 years? Because the spies caused it. And that's why they were in the desert for 40 years. But that's actually not a good enough explanation, because what we know is this. The spies came back and said, we're never going into the land. The people fell for it, and they became despondent, and they said, we'll never go into the land. And Hashem said, oh, you think you're not going to go into the land, so you won't go into the land. In other words, the response that Hashem gave them was, you won't enter Israel. That's what it was. You won't enter Israel. But that could have meant that they would have spent 40 years settled in a different country, not in Israel. But it still could have been a settled environment, human habitat. It didn't have to be in the desert. So don't tell us that the reason the Jews were in the desert for 40 years was because they had been barred from entering Israel. That's not true. They were barred from entering Israel. They could have been anywhere in the world except Israel. Why in a desert? And more specifically, later on, Moshe, when he recalls the experience in the desert, describes how challenging that desert was. A place of snakes and scorpions. It was an overwhelming desert, a frightening desert, a place without water. Why? That's got nothing to do with the spies. The spies was just simply the reason why they could not enter Israel. We need to understand why they had to be in a desert. The answer to that lies in Likutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe's in-depth analysis of the Torah portion of the week. So right at the beginning of this week's parasha, he says, it's almost the exact opposite of what you thought. All of us believe that the reason the Jews were in the desert was that we made a terrible misstep and we landed up in a lot of trouble, and as a result of that, we're in the desert for 40 years. Actually, says the Alter Rebbe, it's almost the exact opposite. Why were they in the desert? To have a positive impact on the desert. The desert, which is a place of desolation, is a place that in spiritual terms spawns all kinds of negative spiritual energies. And having the Jews move through the desert with the Mishkan, the sanctuary of God, that quells that proliferation of negative spiritual energy. In other words, we were reducing the negativity in the world, specifically in that environment, by being there for 40 years. Because negative spiritual energies flourish in a desert. Not only that, but not only, says the Alter Rebbe, did they succeed in blocking and reducing the negative energy in that space and by extension in the world, the fact that the Jews went through the desert for 40 years meant that they were successful in revealing godliness in that desolate, forsaken place. And that took a long time. That's why they were in the desert for 40 years, to be able to have that kind of impact on the world. Totally, radically different from whatever we have always been taught, that they were there to suffer their bad decision of having fallen for the negative attitude of the spies. All right, let's take that a little bit further. Now, without getting into the in-depth spiritual perspective of Chassidus, at face value, we're taught that as the Jews traveled through the desert, they had the cloud of glory that led them. And one of the things that it did is it exterminated all the dangerous creatures that would naturally have been in that area, like snakes and scorpions. And also, as the Jews moved their way through the desert, so the desert actually became habitat. Wherever the Jews went, there was water, there was settlement, so they kind of upgraded and changed the environment. Just to be more specific, what typically distinguishes a desert from a developed, inhabited area is two things. Number one, lo yeshev adam sham. So normally a desert is a place that is devoid of people. Yes, you might have a nomadic group here and a couple of desert farers there, but generally speaking, a desert is not a place where you expect to have a buzzing human habitat. When the Jews were in the desert, there were 600,000 adult males, which by extension works out to about 3 million people, occupying the desert. So it was no longer a desert. A desert, by definition, is devoid of people, and it wasn't. It was teeming with people. Number two, Eretz lo izrua. The second typical thing that you associate with a desert is nothing grows. It's just this vast, endless sand. When the Jews were in the desert, the miraculous well of Miriam accompanied them wherever they went. So there was water, unheard of in a desert. Wherever you go, there's water. And as a direct result of that, there was this oasis around them where they could actually produce things. It was fertile, it was lush, It was an incredible and certainly undesert-like experience. So you can see that the Jews being in the desert had an impact on the desert to change it from its default position, to remove that sense of desolation, to fill it with people and with life. So that's what was happening physically. They populated a desolate area and they transformed the desert into an oasis. Spiritually, it was the same kind of thing. They brought into this place of spiritual void the sense of spiritual awareness. And that has a lot to do with the fact that the Leviim, the tribe of Levi, from the age of 30, had a very important role to play within the community and within this whole process. So what were they appointed to at that age? 30 years old, which is the coming of age if you're a Levite. They were the ones who would transport the Mishkan sanctuary through the desert and then assemble it wherever it is that they arrived at. So they were the ones who created the tool. They created the forum within which all this brocha, this blessing, flowed into the desert. So what was happening in the desert was completely supernatural. The Jews were changing the whole nature of the place. And how did they do that? Because they had the Mishkan. And who was responsible for the Mishkan? The tribe of Levi. So if we want to appreciate what the role of the tribe of Levi was and why we count these three families and what the lesson could be for us, there's our starting point. They hold the keys to the secret of making the desert, spiritual desert, flourish. So yes, the So a big part of putting the Leviim into a position to have this transformative energy that would uplift, upgrade, and transform the desert, they had to be counted, which is what this week's parasha is about. They had to be counted. Why counted? We have a principle in Jewish law that says that once something has been assigned a number, it cannot just be overwhelmed by its environment. So the tribe of Levi had to be in a position where the environment would not overwhelm them, where it wouldn't limit them, where it wouldn't curtail them. On the contrary, they would inform and determine and define the environment in a brand new way. So in order to be able to do that, they had to have the special protection of being counted, having that power that something which has a number associated with it cannot be overwhelmed by its environment. Inyan zeh, Lasses me mitbares nishaves va'koach hazamumayla al yedei atziva lemanoisam hu inyan nitzchi kechol anyonim shebeteri kanal b'chol dor v'dor. So yes, the census of the tribe of Levi was a once-off incident, but the message and the lesson and the energy is absolutely infinite. Why? Because the goal of transforming a desert, spiritual desert, into a place that flourishes with life, spiritual life, that is eternal. That's actually what Judaism is about. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to turn the world around, not accept it for the way it is in its default state. We're encouraged and we're enthusiastic to make a difference to turn it. That's what we're doing every single day through Judaism. And so therefore the message of transforming the desert is relevant to us. And the fact that you have to be counted and assigned to that position, as we shall see, is also relevant to us. So here the Rebbe goes directly into a take-home message. When you think about where you live, where you find yourself, whether that be where you live geographically or where you live mentally, where you live, just the kind of environment that you find yourself in. Often you'll think about it, and when you're a little bit more introspective, you'll say, this is not a place to be inhabited by man. Man, Adam, in this case, refers to Adam Ha'elyon, supernal man. In other words, it's a hostile environment for God. The world I live in is not accommodating to God. It's not welcoming to God. It doesn't speak the language of Hashem. It doesn't. It speaks the language of Hollywood and the language of capitalism and consumerism and all kinds of vices and hatred and who knows what. It doesn't seem to speak the language of God. And then you know what the person thinks, because look, most of the people I know are not interested in God. They don't know what Hashem wants, and I'm not even sure if they want to know what Hashem wants. And those people who do know what Hashem wants, how often do they fail? How often do they get it wrong? I mean, the Torah tells us clearly there's no person who's perfect. There's no person who doesn't sin. So I look around and I think, oh, Gewalt, what a desert. What a place that is so distant from feeling connected and one with Hashem. It's nice in theory. Even the person who I think is like really good, really spiritual, really committed, really connected. Truth is, when I think about it, even when I think about myself, and mostly when I think about myself, it could still improve. They could be better. They're not necessarily doing as best they could. So you look around, you can feel a little bit despondent about our world. Shal pizeh. Harinim tzuhu b'midbar shelo yeshev adam sham ki adam elen elen sham b'ofen shel yashvus kvius v'yachol ha'oved lipol ba'atzlus v'yirush chas v'shalom into shlichus be'ani irchav lanos l'makim acher cholei. So you look around and you think, look, a lot of the people don't feel connected. A lot of the people don't even know what connection means. Those people who do feel connected are not doing it necessarily as well as they could, so they have their ups and downs, and that's why the expression is Lo Yeshev Adam Sham. The Adam Ha'elyon, the supernal being Hashem, cannot be in this place in a permanent way. Lo Yeshev, it can't be set. It's like, we have our moments, we have our inspirations, and then we have our lack of inspiration. A person can reach a point where you say, you know what? Why should I bother? Let me go find another environment that is more inviting, that is more spiritual, that is more connected. I'll be with like-minded people. What do I need this for in my life? Who needs this problem, this headache of all these people who are misguided and disinterested and apathetic and non-religious and all the other things that I think are wrong with my environment? And it could be very tempting for a person to say, I'm out of here. I'm going to live in a nice, pristine place where everybody thinks as I do and everybody is inspired. And that will be amazing. That's what the parasha comes to teach us. It's an eternal lesson. That the Jewish way is that when you're at the desert, you go into the desert and you transform the desert. You don't accept it, and you certainly don't discard it. You transform it. As we're reading about in our parasha over here, how the Jews went in the desert. And what did they do in the desert? They made a difference. That's the Jewish way. They went into the desert on Hashem's instruction. They didn't just go there because they felt bored with wherever they lived or because circumstances pushed them there. They understood that Hashem wanted them in that environment. And whatever part of the desert they touched was transformed and suddenly became no longer desert, no longer inhospitable. So שבכל מקום שהוא נמצא, גם אם המקום מדבר שמם, הרי היוסי שם הוא לא במקרה חס ושלום, אלא בשליחותו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. So the lesson for us is, wherever we find ourselves, even if the place where we find ourselves feels like a desert, feels like it is spiritually void, feels like it is so terrible and misguided, and surely I've got to get out of here, nothing is by chance. Where we are is where Hashem has directed us to be. And if Hashem has directed us to be in a place, then we are his agent and representative to do and achieve something in that place. As the verse says in Tehillim, Hashem mitzadeh gever koinonu, Hashem guides the steps of man. Where we are now, where you are now, where I am now, this is where Hashem wants me to be right now. Adam Ha'elyon. Why does Hashem want me here now? Why does Hashem want you wherever you are now? Why does Hashem want the next person where they are? Because this is the place for us to transform into Hashem's home. For us to take as desert as it might be and make it flourish. We're all very proud, of course, when we hear about how the land of Israel used to be desert and now look at it. Amazing, and the production and drip irrigation and who knows what. We're so proud of it. We don't recognize necessarily that this is what it means to be Jewish. And if we can do it in physical space, we most certainly can and are expected to do it in spiritual space as well. To be a little bit more specific, Rambam, in line with something that the Rambam Maimonides teaches, it's quite a famous, the Rebbe would quote this very often, teaching of the Rambam. Not only if you are actually a member of the tribe of Levi, but every single Jewish person who has the spirit of volunteerism, who's ready to go and do. In other words, anybody who's driven, anybody who has a little bit of inspiration inside their bones. Any person who feels the urge, the drive to separate themselves from ordinary life and to do what Hashem wants, you can become literally like a Levi, like a Kohen. In other words, every single person can step up to the plate and say, I'm going to be like this Kohen, I'm going to be like this Levi. Just as they were the people who transformed the world, who were the conduit of Hashem's presence into the most desolate place on earth to make it flourish with holiness, I can do that too. I can. The Rambam says this. The Rambam writes law. Now, this is not a book of philosophy, it's his Mishnah Torah. It's his book of law. He's talking to us in a practical, pragmatic Jewish sense. You and I can become a Levi. You and I can become the agent to reveal godliness in our place, no matter how much desert it appears to be to us. Any person who chooses that they're going to become the one to teach Hashem's upright ways, that's the quotation, in the world, then just like those people of the tribe of Levi, they were counted. And as we said, halachically, when you're counted and you're assigned a number, you cannot be overwhelmed by your environment. Could happen to you, could happen to me. Any one of us who steps up to the plate and says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to transform my personal little desert, the little community that I live in, the place where I have some sphere of influence. I'm going to make that into a flourishing spiritual oasis in the world. Hashem says, I got your back. I'm going to support you. I'm going to give you the koyach. I'm going to give you the power, the capacity for success. Gam nesius betziruf legadol menu v'ad dageg divnei kos nosius bifnei atzmoi. The Rebbe points out just a little bit of a nuance over here, which is that first you start off with the family of Gershon, who are when they're counted, it says Gershon Gamheim. They're also counted, like kind of you become a tag along to people who are greater than you, or to power that is greater than your own. And then you graduate to the Kahas family, where they're counted as a standalone. That means to say you've got the power on your own. You don't even need somebody to assist you. You don't even need, so to speak, that extra push. You've got this. You've found this within yourself. And every one of us has the capacity to take the desert space that we find ourselves in and to turn it into Hashem's home here on earth, which is an incredible achievement and is the objective of being Jewish. Up until now, we've spoken about the power that we have to influence the world, to make a difference to the world. The truth is, the same lesson applies to us in terms of how we move and shift and elevate ourselves. Sometimes, sadly, a person will do a bit of an introspection, a bit of personal analysis, and say, oi, I actually think I'm the desert. Forget about the desert out there. I think I'm the desert. I think I'm desolate. I'm spiritually bereft. Some of us unfortunately feel that way from time to time when we think about ourselves and our so-called lack of achievement. A person can become quite despondent. Say, how am I ever going to get out of this? How am I ever going to change? Will I ever learn? Will I ever become spiritually inclined? We often think that way. Even people who are quite religious, sometimes we feel empty on the inside. A person's going to say, I know myself. I've been down this road so many times. I've promised myself that I would change and I've failed. I've tried to shift a bad habit or a bad attitude and it's just come back to haunt me. And eventually, actually, the negative has become my normal. So what are you telling me? I'm going to be able to fix myself. I'm going to be able to get out of this desert. I'm going to be able to transform it. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen to me. Maybe it will happen to somebody else. It's not going to happen to me. I know myself. I've been down this road enough times. I know exactly how I work. It's not going to happen to me. I'm in a desert, and I'm stuck in the desert. This is the lesson for us. The tribe of Levi were 30 years old. For the first 30 years of their life, they did not do this service of Hashem. They did not represent Him in the Mishkan, in the sanctuary. They didn't. They were just, so to speak, if you want, ordinary citizens. And then what happened? Suddenly out of the blue, after 30 years of nothing, like this, their whole world changes. The next thing you know, these people, they're serving in the Mishkan and they're transforming the world and they're turning a desert into an oasis, both materially but more importantly spiritually. These are people who for 30 years did nothing. What about me? This applies to every single one of us. It doesn't matter who we have been until this moment, this very moment that we're learning the Sikha. It makes no difference who I've been until now. It makes no difference how much I haven't done until now. It actually doesn't make a difference. If any of us takes a decision and makes a resolution that from here on, I am in, I'm dedicated, I'm going to do what Hashem wants, I'm going to work to make my environment meaningful. Any one of us will be empowered by Hashem to get rid of whatever dirt, whatever layers of spiritual contaminant we have acquired, we have collected. We can get rid of it all. We can clear ourselves completely. And every single one of us has the potential, has the power. Today, you could start today, I could start today, and we could shift ourselves. Shed the baggage and start to bring godliness into our personal desert. This is an eternal message. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter who, doesn't matter when. Each of us has the ability to step up to the plate, make that decision. I will be different. I'm going to try. I'm going to do something that pushes me beyond myself. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It doesn't mean I have to change my whole life around. I'm going to take a step in the right direction. I'm going to make a commitment to be more in line with what Hashem wants, and the miracles start to happen. The desert begins to flourish in a way that we would never have imagined. Now, to do this properly, to really transform ourselves from desert, there are two major approaches that we have to take. The first is called Sur Meira, which means to go away from the negative, and the other is Vasei Toiv, to increase in the positive. Just like the parable that is used is, if you want to build a home, a palace for a king, first you have to get rid of whatever dirt might already be in that building, clear the place out, and once you've done that, then you can start to make it into a palace suitable for a king. Same thing with ourselves. Before I can start to invite holiness into myself and really, really move into this level of connection and transform the desert, first I've got to get rid of some of the baggage. I've got to get rid of some of the negative. In fact, this principle of these two different approaches is alluded to in the two names of the families of the Leviim, of the Levite tribe, that are counted in this week's parasha. Gershon Miloshan Gershon Sumeira. The family of Gershon is associated with the word legaresh, which means to chase. Chasing away the bad, that's step number one. Chase away the bad. That's the family who was mentioned first. First, let's get rid of the bad. Let's get rid of the history. And then, and then you get to the family of Kahas, which Kahas means to gather. to bring everything together, to bring everything into a healthy space. Once I've managed to clear out my bad habits, my bad attitude, my negativity, my despondency, all that stuff, I managed to push it away, then I'm in a position to draw into my world that which is positive. And that's why Hashem designed it, that the family of Gershon would be the children of the older brother, Gershon. He's born first. Why is he born first? Because that approach of Gershon, of chasing out, ridding yourself of negativity, is the first step. And after that, you get to Kahos, which is the ability to consolidate, to bring meaning and holiness and direction into the space that you have now created. One last point, just to round this up and to help us understand it properly, is that if you look at the job description of the Gershon family and the job description of the Kahos family, it also helps us to understand the process of how it is that we're supposed to make this shift and make the desert flourish. The Gershon family, remember, Gershon represents Ligaresh, to send away, to chase, to get rid of the negative. Their job was to carry the Yerios, which were the covers on the outside of the Mishkan. Kahas, the family that represents consolidating and bringing meaning into your space, they would carry the inner elements of the Mishkan, the ark and the show table that was used for the special breads that had to be brought, etc. And that's So what's the difference? Those Yerios, those covers over the top of the Mishkan, they're there to protect you, right? So that if it rains or whatever it is, you won't get drenched inside the Mishkan. So in the same way, when you get rid of the negativity, that creates a protective aura around you. You're now kind of immune. You're kind of protected from the negative elements and aspects of this world. Whereas the ark and the menorah, the things that go inside the Mishkan, those are quite specific. These are the things that you do. Now, what do you do in that space? So you've created a healthy environment, a pristine environment, as we would call it in today's world, a sanitized environment. So now what do you bring into that space? And that's basically what he's telling us, that there are two steps that every single one of us can do. First thing is, stop worrying about the past. Make a choice from here on. I'm clearing the past. Gershon, I'm getting rid of what was. I'm no longer going to define myself by my history. And then Kahos, I'm going to fill that space with something of meaning and upliftment and inspiration, and that's going to change me and my environment. So when you stay away from what is wrong, that is like putting a protective canopy over yourself, because you're now protected from the things that might trip you up, that might cause you to fail. And I say, and then I fill the space with positive mitzvahs, just like you fill the space with an ark and with a menorah, etc. So I fill my space with meaningful experiences. A mitzvah is not just something I do, it's a meaningful, transformative experience. If I follow these two processes, I'm able to take whatever desert I might believe that I live in and turn it into the most wonderful palace for Hashem. How isn't that incredible? So you take a story that seems obscure to most. Listen, I'm going to page past it, because what's there to learn over here? So they counted a few people and gave them jobs. And the Rebbe illustrates how that is a personal, meaningful, current lesson that you could apply and I could apply in our lives right now, and it would be totally transformative for ourselves and for the environment that we live in.